Good evening, everyone. My name is Sheila Croxon, and on behalf of the Coaches Association of Ontario and the Board of Directors, I want to welcome everyone to the final session of Day 8 and the final session of the 2021 Ontario Coaches Conference, dealing with uncertainty, preparing for Tokyo 2021 and beyond. I am sure I speak for all when I say that there has been so many incredible pearls of wisdom shared over the past 8 days. I hope you know, coaches, just how important you are and the incredible impact you have and are having on the people that you coach. As Alistair McCaw so clearly stated earlier this week, you are not coaching a sport, you are coaching a person who plays a sport, reminding us that human connection is the most important coaching skill. This message has been reinforced by so many of our amazing speakers over the past several days. Kiwami Osai reminded us to put the person before the player and that every child is one caring adult away from being a success story. Coaches, we at the Coaches Association of Ontario salute you. Keep being the difference makers. Keep doing the important work you are doing. We wish to give a big thank you to the Government of Ontario and their unwavering support of coaches and the incredible work they recognize each of you contribute to your athletes and communities across our province. We have a special guest here with us to say a few words. I am pleased to introduce you to the Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries, the Honourable Lisa Mcleod.
I'd like to offer my warmest wishes to this year's virtual Ontario Coaches Conference. Since 2007, this iconic event has celebrated and created opportunities for our province's teachers, coaches, administrators, and trainers who are all dedicated to supporting our athletes from playground to podium. This year's theme, Shaping Tomorrow Today, is a fitting theme for the 14.5 million Ontarians who continue to do their part to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and have a safe return to sport for our coaches, our athletes, trainers, and spectators. As your sports minister, I am proud that our government has committed over $44.1 million to sport this year to support the sport and recreation sector. This includes $4.1 million to the Canadian Sport Institute of Ontario, as well as $1 million Coaches Association of Ontario. I'm also proud that our government continues to support Ontario coaches by allowing you to participate in this conference for free through the Coaches Association of Ontario's Coaching Enhancement Funding Programs. Thank you to all of the participants in this week's conference, as well as the incredibly talented team at Coaches Association of Ontario and the Canadian Sport Institute. I look forward to working with you on a continued basis, once it's safe to do so, to ensure Ontario remains the best place to live, work, and to play sports.
Thank you, Minister Mcleod.
I'd like to offer.
Coaches make a difference in this world, and we are so grateful for a partner in the Government of Ontario who values the commitment, dedication, and effort coaches play in strengthening communities and empowering the leaders of tomorrow. Just a few housekeeping items for you before we get started with our presentation this evening. This session will run until approximately 8 p.m. You may use the public session chat to ask questions to be read aloud at the end of the presentation. If at any time you need assistance, you can contact the CAO team by using the chat box in the bottom left corner of your screen that says Contact CAO, and a member of the team will get back to you. Today's session is being recorded and will be available for viewing within a few hours from the Sessions tab. Additionally, you will have continued access to this virtual hub for 30 days. The CAO will make available public video links and resources for you to view outside of the hub after the conference, and these will be sent to you via email. And now, this evening's session, we are thrilled to be joined by Ryan McDonald, high performance manager, and senior strength and conditioning coach for Volleyball Canada's beach national team. Ryan is also the team leader for Volleyball Canada's beach volleyball teams at the Tokyo Olympics. Accompanying Ryan, we have Team Canada's Women's Beach Volleyball World Championship duo. That's right, currently ranked #1 in the world, Melissa Humana-Paredes and Sarah Pavan. Please join me in welcoming Ryan, Melissa, and Sarah. I'll hand it over to you now.
Thanks, Sheila. Good evening, everybody. It's awesome to be involved with this group, and it's amazing that we were able to put together the virtual conference when it's tough for people to be apart. So it's great that we found a solution where everyone can come together and share some great ideas and really take some incredible lessons moving forward. So I'm honored to be here today with Sarah and Melissa, and we're just going to kind of share what it's been like for the past year, but to understand that, we're going to go a little bit further back and work our way through kind of the last 4 years, almost 5 years now of an Olympic quad. So, and like any coach, I deal a lot in analogies, and what better analogy for a typical Olympic quad, but the 2020 Olympic quad than a roller coaster. You know, it's got its ups and its downs, and all those just unanticipated twists and turns that can come at us across 4 years, and these 5 years were no different so far. So, and that ride doesn't really start with the ride itself. There's all those preparations, you know, whether it's getting to the park, getting in the park, all of those steps to show up and get ready to ride the roller coaster itself. And in our sense, this was no different. Well, there's a lot of steps that kind of went into getting ready to meet the challenges that we did this year, and it's been an incredible start for Sarah and Melissa joining together as a team in 2017 or late 2016, and you guys have each had some incredible time through those first 3 years, 4 years of competition. So, you know, Sarah, in those first years, what really sticks out to you in terms of you guys and your team and some of those initial learnings?
Yeah, I think, you know, at the beginning of a partnership, beach volleyball is really unique in the fact that it is a team sport, but it's almost an individual sport. So it's just got that very, very strong team dynamic, just having two players together. So in the first couple years, we just really focused on our duo and building that foundation together, but also in finding support staff that would help us reach our goals. It didn't happen all at once. Melissa and I, we were very fortunate. We were successful on the court very early, but there was so much more that went into it, and our relationship and dealing with coaching and sports psych and who's going to support us on the road, strength and conditioning, all of that factored into our team's development over these past 4 years. So first couple of years on court was great, but
honeymoon phase, right?
But we had to, you know, really work to find the people around us that would support us in helping take our game to the top level in the world.
And Mel, this was your first year or your first real quad kind of in an Olympic prep cycle. What was that like for you coming into the team and partnering up with Sarah, ready to go for the Olympic quad?
It was a completely different level that I wasn't sure I was ready for. And I was honored and so humbled to have been given the opportunity and to have been asked by Sarah to kind of join her in this journey, and that she saw potential in me. And it was a huge learning curve. You know, I was coming from a younger level and partnering with one of the best players in the world and definitely in Canada. She was operating at a very high professional level. So for me, I had to meet her there. And so it was a huge opportunity for me to kind of prove myself to her that she made the right choice in picking me, but also to myself that, you know, I could rise to this occasion. And I learned I learned so much about the game, and I've been playing the game at that point for a long time, but I still didn't know half of what I know now. And so it was really incredible to kind of learn that side of the game, learn kind of how to be more professional, how to rise to the occasion, and be a part of a group that was so driven and so motivated and so goal focused, that it allowed me to kind of, I think, catch up quick. And I think we did an incredible job, like Sarah mentioned, of focusing really on our partnership and on our team, and on her helping me kind of get there, but also me contributing some things as well. And so it was a lot, and it came very fast, but it was fun, and it was not always easy, but worth it.
Exactly. And I think as a program too, we learned immensely. This was the first quad I've ever been a part of where we've essentially had preparations and a mindset going into the Olympics from day one of the quad. So this has turned into a quint, but this quad from day one, we were really focused on how do we show up in Tokyo at our best, and we learned a lot. And I mean, we cracked some eggs. We had this great idea and this preparation to do a training camp in Vienna before our competition, and it was the best supported but lowest performance of any of the competitions that year. And that was one of those things where coming out of it, we took a lot of time to learn and reflect, and those events started to show up, and those learnings from that event really showed up when we got into the next years, and especially as we got into the World Championships, because for beach, the World Championships doesn't happen at the end of the season or at the start of the season. It kind of shows up right in the middle. So we showed up in Hamburg in early July, late June, and we're able to apply a lot of those learnings. And this is kind of the end of that.
Pavan with the service. Once again, that pressure dial is turned down on the USA. Good serve received from April Ross. Pavan is there! Gold for Canada! It's the block from Sarah Pavan that gives Canada their first ever World Championship medal. And Melissa Humana-Paredes and Sarah Pavan are the world champions, and they're on their way to Tokyo 2020.
Well, we'll call
Excuse me while I cry for a sec.
Oh, that's. I mean, I've said it a number of times. That is an addicting feeling. Hearing the national anthem and seeing you guys standing up on the podium, and hearing kind of all that noise kind of in that bubble down at the competition around us. But the unique thing about that was, you guys were the first team to qualify for Tokyo with beach volleyball because you won the World Championship. So that's what kind of cemented your ticket to going to Tokyo in 13 months later. So Mel, walk us through kind of that realization that we've qualified for Tokyo, and that's now on our calendar.
You know what, honestly, for both Sarah and I, it didn't really hit us until a little bit later, like a few hours later, what we had just accomplished and what it meant to win the World Championships. I mean, there's a lot behind that title, but for us and for our sport, it also meant a birth to the Olympics. And so I remember I think we were being interviewed or something, and the reporter was like, so how does it feel to know that you've booked your ticket to Tokyo? And we're like, oh my God, we booked our ticket to Tokyo. And so it didn't really hit us until that moment. And I think there was a huge sense of excitement, but also in a way relief as well. Like, we had done it. We were the first team to do it. And now for the next couple of years, or I guess the next year, we can just focus on working on our Olympic ranking and our seeding, and focus on our performance as a team and just our health and our strength. And it just allowed us to kind of free up a little bit of our mind space to put that towards working with other things that we felt we needed to work on in our game. But yeah, it didn't really hit us initially. And then when it did, it was a really kind of freeing moment.
Yeah, 'cause I remember we were sitting having pizza. Like that was your guys' kind of celebratory post-competition treat. There's always pizza, regardless of where you are in the world. And well, for anyone out there that doesn't really understand the ins and outs of beach volleyball, Sarah and Mel have a personal coach who really sort of is responsible for driving their team. His name's Scott Davenport, and he's a phenomenal mind on the beach volleyball side, but also on the preparation, planning, organizational side. And we just kind of sat there at dinner and looked at each other and like, okay, so Tokyo's on the calendar now, and let's just we just started throwing down some ideas around what's the next 13 months going to look like. So from a planning side, it was great for me because I knew, okay, we're gonna go to Tokyo, so we can start working back -6 weeks, -12 weeks. We can kind of start building out that periodization so that you guys are at your best. And Sarah, you guys have been, and you yourself, you've been in Rio, and you've played in multiple world championships, Commonwealth Games. What did you learn specifically from this world championship experience? It was a new experience, but there's a lot of cool things to take away from.
Yeah. I think the cool thing about our world championships is that it lasts 10 days, which is very similar to a multi-sport games experience. So it is a marathon, and it's about, we periodize to get to our peak at world championships, but world championships itself is also quite a journey, moving through the group phase and then into single elimination from there. So I think a big thing that we learned was that it's not about playing your best every single moment. A lot of, winning and teams that experience success, they're not always playing their best, but they find ways to win. And that was sort of the story for us, in the early part of World Championships, as we were working out some kinks. We hadn't played well in tournaments leading up to that, but we were finding ways to score points when it mattered. And there was no stress around that. We went out there, our staff had prepared us so well. Ryan is our team leader, but he's also mine and Melissa's strength and conditioning coach. And so Ryan's programming to get us physically ready for Hamburg was incredible. Our personal coach, Scott, the way that he was game planning, the way we were focusing on certain things in practice, it was all very deliberate with a big picture goal in mind. So we were absorbing all of these pieces, and it wasn't about performing amazing for every single point. It was about building a foundation so that when the moment was there, we could rely on the process that we had built and trust that our staff did everything and we had done everything we could to be our best in that moment. And, I think a second takeaway is that your relationship with your teammates and with your staff is paramount. There are times when we almost crumbled, but we looked at each other, and it's our relationship that got us through certain points. So I think at our level, everybody is amazing at volleyball. But I truly believe that the teams that surround themselves with the right people and the teams that put their relationship first are the ones that really take that next step.
Yeah, and I mean, that testament to the process and taking steps by steps and not chasing the ups and downs of competition, but just being so dedicated to your guys' craft really showed up that game, and it's continued to show up. And I mean, I remember coming home and just being absolutely zonked. I was exhausted, I was tired, I was fatigued. I had a baby on the way, and I was useless to my wife. But you guys go out and you guys go to compete in more competitions right after. You hop on a plane and you go to Switzerland. And what was that kind of turnaround like, going to Switzerland? And how did Scott kind of help refocus after that highest of highs in that whole experience?
I mean, to be honest, the tournament in Switzerland, it stole our thunder because we did not have enough time to really understand and come to terms with and celebrate what we just accomplished, because literally the next morning we were on a flight and heading to another country to get ready to play in another tournament. And so it definitely took us a while to kind of come to terms with the magnitude of what we had just accomplished, but we had to quickly put that away. And so it was hard. It was hard to go from such a high and then be like, oh, never mind, we got to forget about it because we have to focus on this. And to say that's easy is a lie. And to say that we did that flawlessly is also a lie. I think that week was really challenging. And Sarah and I will both admit it was probably one of the hardest weeks of our career. And we went from such an emotional high to really such an emotional low for the both of us. And so we didn't rebound the way we wanted to in that weekend or that week in Switzerland. I think to our standards, we underperformed. And I think what Scott did to kind of help walk us through that week was he gave us a different goal to kind of work towards. And Sarah, you're gonna have to chime in and correct me if I'm wrong with this, but it was something like there's a trend historically that world champions typically do really poorly the next tournament after it because they're on that high. And it was true for the men's of that year. The Russian men's who also won the world championship did extremely poorly in Switzerland. And so Scott kind of reframed how we wanted to approach Stade by just don't do so bad. Just, have a goal, but have it be a realistic goal, because he was very understanding of where our minds were, where our bodies were, and just what we had just gone through. And so we ended up finishing 5th, and we definitely could have made it into the semifinals. Like that game still haunts me, but we finished 5th it's not bad. It's not bad considering, but I don't think it was to our level. So all in all, it was a tough week. I think there were so many lessons from it. But it was also a huge learning experience for both Sarah and I to realize what an emotional roller coaster it is to win and to lose, and how much we can learn from that moment.
Yeah, and I mean, we're still just the start of July. Like, you guys went from Hamburg, June, July, Switzerland in July, Edmonton, Tokyo, and then back to Rome. And you guys.
Vienna.
Oh, and Vienna, right? So, I'm maybe everyone out there can start to piece that globe together in their mind, and they're just kind of going back and forth and back, and still finish the season really strong. I mean, it's a testament to the team that they consider 5th a little bit of a disappointing performance, but they're 5th and 1st through the end of that season, and all in all, a pretty strong end to the season. And we kind of went into that 2020 off season, and that's where the roller coaster gets so exciting, because you start kind of just ticking up that hill and start kind of going up, and you get that anticipation, that excitement, and it just continues to build the closer and closer and closer you get to the top. And looking back, I remember all of our focus organizationally was on taking how do we learn from this past 3 years, this past 4 years, especially Commonwealth Games, especially World Championships, and take that learning and apply it to our preparations for Tokyo, and making sure that we're leaving no stone unturned. And then the other one was heat. Tokyo was anticipated to be incredibly hot. We had a number of hot competitions in Japan and Yokohama through that year, so we were really focused on the heat aspect. That's kind of our biggest piece to attack and to manage, just so that we were kind of racking up all these competitive advantages. And then, you guys have an incredible off season. We get up to it, and then it's that peak. It's that moment before we drop. It's that, like, you can feel your heart rate kind of start to pick up. You can feel that excitement. Like, here we are. We are ready to go. Coming back from a Tokyo site visit at the end of February, when kind of all the stuff's sort of swirling around already. Sarah, what feeling, like, this is another Olympic prep, that last year of the Olympics for you? You're ready to go. What's that like in those final few months before the season starts?
I will say, leading into the 2020 season, I was experiencing a mixture of excitement and, for lack of a better term, fear. Now, I was so excited because we were coming through that preseason and we're playing, in my opinion, better than we had in 2019. Things were clicking. We were playing and practicing at an extremely high level. So that was really exciting. Now, the fear part comes in because, first of all, I am an older athlete. Thank you very much. So I knew that what me and Melissa have, like, I was like, okay, this is my chance. 2020 in Tokyo is my chance as an athlete to win a gold medal. A little bit scary. It was also terrifying because seeing how good we were playing, I was like, oh my gosh, we are going to win the Olympics. I just knew it. I felt it in my soul. And that is a scary feeling. So fear isn't the right word. Holler at me if you have a better word. But it was like so much emotion and just like anticipation, but also a little bit of pressure, being like, I am not going to be in a partnership like this again. We are very good. We can't mess this up. And then being like, but we're so good. That's so amazing. So there was like a lot of emotions swirling around. I wanted the season to just start so I could stop thinking about it. And unfortunately it didn't.
Yeah, and Mel, like, this is your first, you're kind of in the mix for Rio a little bit. Like, you're kind of candidate 3 coming into Rio, and you're sort of aware of it. You came to Rio as a training partner. So some of this noise, expectation, anticipation build was something that you were aware of it, and your father's had some immense experiences on the Olympic stage as well. What's that like for you, sitting like with this view, sort of seeing that roller coaster ahead and ready, just waiting for that plunge to happen?
I echo a lot of what Sarah said. It was both really exciting because we were coming off of such great momentum, and we were just training really well. And to me, that off season was one of my best off seasons. Not anymore, because this past off season was the best, but we were feeling really good. And I was also really nervous and anxious, and fear is not the right word. Sarah's right, but going into the Olympics being, one of the top contenders, a medal threat, it puts a lot on your shoulders and there's a target on your back. And so we knew going into that season that we were going to have to rise to the occasion every single time we stepped on the court. No one who was going to play us had anything to lose. And we had our own expectations and we had other people's expectations, but we needed to kind of just like settle that heading into the season. And like Sarah said, we just wanted it to start. We were like just weeks away from starting season, and we were excited. But it was daunting. It's like the lead up. It's like the jitters that you don't have yet. And then once you start season, you kind of settle in and it's fine. But it's like those few months where you're just like, you're anxious, you're jittery.
Yeah, and it's that like, let's go, let's hurry up and start the season. And I remember it was the last day that the Canadian Olympic Committee was doing a site visit in Tokyo. So we went through and saw all of the venues, and like I had our rooms picked out in the village. Like I was like, okay, this is where everybody is going to be in the village. Like this is every one of our Team Canada apartments. This is where so-and-so is going to be. This is where everything. And then we sit down for this last briefing to say, okay, there's you guys have heard about the coronavirus, and here's what we think about it. And looking back at my notes, like I misspelled the coronavirus the first time. I kind of had the corona, like with some question marks around it. Just talking about where my mind was at kind of after 3 or 4 days in Tokyo and ready to go. But it's just changed our world so significantly. Like Mel, you just said it, like we were 2 weeks away from the start of the competition. Like I was coming to California, and then I was coming right up to Cancun for the start of our season. And it's like the brakes just got pulled on us. And professionally, I think that was and many coaches and many other people on the call probably relate to this. It was the hardest month professionally for me. Just the amount of communication, the amount of information that's coming in and trying to disseminate it. and get it back out to you guys and our coaches and our athletes and our ISP and everyone that's involved and really engaged in this. And also just acknowledging the stuff that we didn't know. Like, there was so much out there that we just didn't even have an idea about or knowledge about. And Sarah, I remember you and I having some pretty open and honest conversations in those first few days after COC announced the Olympics were canceled. What sticks out to you during those first couple days?
I remember initially being incredibly angry. I was angry because I knew that certain people were aware that there were talks of this happening, that it was coming, but to be completely blindsided by it and find out in the media, not from anybody else, like that was in conversations, and to find out reading an article, that made me incredibly angry. And I remember I called you, Brian, that night, and I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. I was like, this isn't happening. And you told me they better watch out in 2021 because you're going to mess some people up. And I was like, yeah, I am, because this is not okay. So eventually got over the anger. And honestly, I was moving through the phases of grief. I was then in denial. Like, no, this isn't happening. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Like, we're going to get our chance. We're playing so well. Like, it's for sure going to happen. I became incredibly sad. I like disappeared and refused to talk to anybody for at least a couple weeks. So it was a really rough time. And then obviously the doubts and the thoughts of like, well, when we get back to playing, are we going to be as good as we were? Is our chemistry going to be the same? Is everybody else going to like catch up and be better, but we're going to say the same? Like, just, it was a complete mess in my head. And I think I had to go through that. I needed to go through all of those processes and grieve the loss of a big dream of mine as a professional. And eventually I came to acceptance. And allowing myself to move through those emotions made the acceptance part so beautiful, because it allowed me to fully immerse myself in the quarantine experience. And let me tell you, I was training for that my whole life because I'm a huge introvert. And I finally let myself experience it. So there was so much good that came out of quarantine and that time off. But early on, it was war zone inside my brain, for sure.
And Sarah, you touched on it right at the start. Anyone who goes forward watching Sarah and Mel play, when Sarah gets angry, just watch the level that she gets to after. If she starts getting knocked to across the net, or if she has that extra little stare.
Watch out for the see-through glasses. The eyes go crazy. It's very embarrassing.
Sarah is a very fun Sarah. And Mel, your dad coached a Canadian team to win bronze in Atlanta in beach volleyball. So not only do you have your dad, you have your dad, the coach with immense experience, and you have Scott. So you kind of have these coaches all around you. But what were those conversations like with your dad in those first couple of days as you're going through kind of those similar experiences and hearing the news coming out?
I am very lucky to have him as a resource. I definitely take it for granted. And sometimes I don't really listen as much as I should, but he was a really comforting source of inspiration for me during that time when I really needed it. And because he's kind of been through the Olympic experience, he knows that the Olympics is unlike anything else we're ever going to experience. And so this was just an added obstacle to this whole experience and to this journey. And so he really tried to put that into perspective. This is just going to make the journey much sweeter when it does come around. And he just tried to kind of really just reassure me that adaptability, resilience, and grit, are traits of every athlete and every journey that we need to go through. We need to have these. And so it was in that moment when we needed to started to get creative and get resilient and find ways to be adaptable. And I feel like those words have been said over and over again for the past year. Like adaptability is like the pandemic word for all athletes and coaches and everyone in this Olympic journey. But that's kind of what I had to do. And so it took me a while, but I had to stop feeling really sorry for myself and start finding ways to kind of figure out what I can do to better myself in this time, and not just kind of like dwell. Yes, go through the grieving process because we all had to, and it hit me a little bit later. But also find ways to keep working on your dream. It doesn't just end. And I think when I was in the pandemic, I struggled with comparing myself to other people in other countries and other athletes and my competitors and what they were doing differently. And I was locked in a living room and trying to work out of a living room. And that I was really resentful. But ultimately, again, he just kind of brought me back to we can only control what we can control. And that's just I tried to use that to kind of calm my mind. Oh yes, not using pivot. That was another one.
Yeah, pivot just starts to get the Friends episode going in my brain every time. So thankfully, I stay away from that man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. Like we kind of, it's like being on that roller coaster, and then instead of having that anticipation of going down and dropping into that crazy, exciting, like emotional roller coaster, you start going back down that same hill and like kind of end up sitting back in the station. And we're seeing all these other countries doing different things around us, and we still knew you guys were going to Tokyo. We still knew you had qualified by virtue of World Championships. And we had that benefit because we knew even if there's one competition, we can prepare for that one competition. It doesn't really matter what else is on the schedule as long as Tokyo happens. But Mel, you kind of touched on it earlier. Like it was hard for myself as well, but it must have been hard from the athlete's perspective, seeing athletes in other countries who may not have had restrictions tightly, watching them train out on the stand, in the gym, kind of doing whatever. And how do you deal with that? How do you manage that?
Another key word I found in the pandemic was perspective. That came up a lot. And so it was perspective for me to understand that what and how Canada was handling the pandemic was with other people in mind. It was for the health and safety of ourselves and for other people in mind. And so while I was kind of locked in a living room trying to work out and seeing, some other competitors being able to utilize their training facilities and whatnot, I would try and justify it like, okay, we're doing this for the health and safety of others. There are bigger things happening right now, and we have our health and we have our safety. And my family is safe and I'm healthy and I can still, adapt and train out of my living room, work on things. It's giving me a little bit more time to work on those things that I was maybe putting off prior to, like my shoulder exercises, being really diligent with that. I had the time. And it also, it made me recognize our privilege in being a team that has qualified. And so the question of what happened to the Olympic qualification process now never really weighed on Sarah and I, because we had that already. We had that already in the bucket. But it was really just trying to break it down to what can I control, and look at how privileged I am. And it will always come down to, this is what I can do to make myself better, to make my team better in the interest and health of others. But I can't control what other people are doing. I can't control how other governments are running it. I can only control what I can.
And that wait was long. Like we sat in that kind of like perpetual circle of death, essentially. Like we had on our computers for, I mean, the better part of 8 months, really. We were fortunate to play in the AVP and playing some competitions down there. And Sarah, what was that like going into these competitions in the U.S.? They were kind of domestic competitions. For anyone that's not familiar with the American volleyball, let's compete.
What?
Hmm?
What was it like going into those competitions?
Yeah, what was it like going into, you're in California, you're in the middle of the pandemic, and this organization was fortunate enough to create these competitions in August. Well, what's that like, being able to compete, but also all the stuff's happening around you still?
Yeah, it was challenging. Melissa and I, we do this as our full-time job. So obviously an opportunity to earn income was great. So there was that, but I really credit like our staff in just putting things in perspective. Like, you guys have been in lockdown. You've been trying your best to stay fit and to stay accountable to each other on your journey, which is commendable. But you are not going to be Sarah and Mel from 2019 today. So let's keep that in mind. And as two athletes who are, always pushing for excellence, expect to win every tournament we play, that was hard. It was humbling to step out onto the sand after not being able to train for 3-4 months against players who had been training. We're the Canadians on the AVP. They already don't like us because all the Americans want to beat us. So there's that added stuff that we have to deal with. So from top to bottom, it was a great exercise in perspective and patience and compassion for ourselves. It was so easy as a professional athlete and somebody who does pursue excellence for their job as to really beat up on yourself for things that aren't going well. So to be able to take a step back and be like, this is a time that we have to be nice to ourselves and be okay not being Sarah and Mel, the world champions, but just being there for each other. Let's enjoy playing volleyball again because it was taken away from us for a few months. Let's love playing. Let's love being in this team atmosphere again. We love our staff. We love each other. So let's just play for that. And I think once we were able to put aside the frustrations at our bodies not being able to do what we want all the time, it made things a lot easier. So I think at the end of the day, we just left that experience with an immense amount of gratitude at the opportunity to come together again in such a weird situation, at the opportunity to earn some money. And, it's always been, let's just look forward since then.
And yeah, coming out of the AVP, we had some ideas around, okay, Tokyo, it looks like it's going to happen. The IOC, everyone kind of associated with it was saying, well, it's going to happen. Here come the Olympics, be prepared. Canadian Olympic Committee had their plans. The International Federation for Beach Volleyball was also had their plans and said, well, there are going to be some competitions next year. So we start getting back up that hill, but similar to this really kind of Stephen King nightmarish one. I would have hoped it had been a little bit brighter, a little bit nicer looking, but so it's still foggy, that path ahead, and there's rumors and misinformation, or you can't see that whole track because a lot of it's still obscured. And Mel, you're super bubbly, super optimistic. What are you guys doing daily in that experience or in those times to stay motivated when you don't always see each step ahead of you and you're not really sure what you're training for or when you're going to be able to compete? How do you stay motivated through that period?
That was a challenging time for sure, especially because, again, you are seeing, your competitors and what they're doing. And people are kind of shifting their training routines to account for the loss of a season. And so a lot of questions entered our head, like, what should we be doing now? Like, should we be continuing to train? How are we going to continue this? And so when you're in a moment like that, when there's so much uncertainty, it really comes down to having to just look at what you can do each day and creating objectives and goals for the day. It's so hard to plan, a week in advance or a month in advance in the middle of a pandemic. And so as athletes who are used to routine and used to planning 4 years out, a year out, it was really hard to just kind of like stay present and in the day and just understand what you can do in this moment is all that you can do. So it was also probably one of the best lessons that I got from the pandemic was being present and just mindful and there for each day, being able to just control what I could do. And it was a huge task for our team as well to get creative and try and find ways to keep us sane as well in the quarantine. But I mean, if you're asking me what I did to stay motivated, like I found little things that I wanted to improve on, like my shoulder health, my ankle health, some nagging injuries that I could use, which, this season have brought me no issues. So I think this was like a perfect little
Knock on wood.
Yeah, everybody. But yeah, I think it was a great opportunity to kind of use this to get better. Like it was like, okay, we have this extra time. How are we going to use it? Let's motivate ourselves to get better so that when we do reunite again, and when we do start preparing for the Olympics, we'll be like better than ever.
Exactly. And then we start to get that schedule. We start to see that path ahead. And unfortunately, we switch from a roller coaster to driving a car just because the fog and the path. But you start to see that competition schedule starting to come in, and Qatar and Mexico, and we start to get those kind of spots on the road, or those quick little pieces, and still keeping Tokyo out in front of us in the vision, and making sure that everything we're doing is still going towards Tokyo. Sarah, this is your kind of the third time now that you're showing up for the Olympics and getting ready after Rio and then Tokyo 21 and then Tokyo version 2. But what's this like kind of now that you're seeing the schedule come out and you can start planting some of those objectives for the season, and you can start putting together a clear plan?
Oh, it's great. We know what's up. We actually get to play before the Olympics, which was a big question mark. When we came together to start training in January, it was like, okay, we could be practicing for tournaments or we could be practicing for the Olympics, but let's just do it. But like there are tournaments. So we are, again, as Melissa alluded to earlier, we are in a very privileged position of knowing that we will be at the Olympics. And so we are viewing these tournaments as opportunities to gather information, whether it's about ourselves or about our opponents, to identify any weaknesses, identify things that are going well, and to experiment in heat training. We are playing in the Doha Desert. We are going to Mexico. Perfect. We will be prepared for Tokyo. So while other teams are really using this to just scramble and gather points to get into Tokyo, our staff and us, we are using this as research, and that's amazing. So we've already learned so much from our first tournament. We're able to periodize our strength and conditioning because now we know what we're, playing. Our coach, having him at tournaments to be able to see in real time what other teams are doing against us. It's been so valuable. So we're really excited to continue on in the next couple of months to keep working out the little tweaks and kinks.
Yeah, and Mel, talking about you guys went into Doha, and you guys essentially decided a week before you went that we're going to go to Doha now, and we're going to to play. What kind of went into that decision? It was in the schedule. You guys didn't have to make a decision right away. You could have withdrawn as a result of everything that's happening. But those will we, won't we decisions, like what were those kind of last 2 weeks going into the competition like?
Yeah, we definitely did not know where we were going to be at in relation to other teams, and if we were going to be competition ready heading into Doha. We didn't know if it was going to kind of disrupt our preparation because we didn't necessarily need to go because we had already qualified. There were a lot of questions up in the air. And so for us, we were, I feel like for a few weeks there, really not leaning towards going. You know, it was risky. Do we want to travel across the world right now in COVID? How is this gonna work? What if we're not prepared? There were just a lot of like unknowns and insecurity starting to pop up. And then we played in this mini exhibition tournament a couple weeks prior to leaving, really, or deciding to go to the tournament. And when we started competing, this was our first competition, even though it was an exhibition, it was like a little mini tournament, local. When we started to step on the court together and like feel the adrenaline and feel the jitters, I feel like we kind of knew pretty quickly, like, okay, no, we have to go. Like, we have to go compete. We have to feel this again. It's been way too long. And even if we aren't ready, which that tournament helped us realize that we actually were ready. And it was kind of like our own thoughts in our own head that were holding us back, but we were really quite ready. Even if we weren't ready, it's still a great opportunity to get back out on the court and to play, and which is something we haven't been able to do, and to feel the excitement of being next to Sarah on the court and just competing and fighting and getting creative. I think we realized that there was more value in experiencing that than being ready, whatever that means. And so for us, once we finished that tournament, which we ended up winning the exhibition tournament, but by no means was it pretty or perfect. There was still a lot that we needed to work on, and it was quite eye-opening. But it was like, no, we need to go. We need to go. We need to play and just feel this feeling again. And we can learn so much from just competing. And when we got to Doha, we realized that we were actually a lot further along than we thought we were, and that our process and like what we did in the off season got us to this point, and we just needed to trust the process.
Yeah, I think. I'm a massively process-oriented person to a fault sometimes, but I think that approach that you guys just spoke about is huge, because we can only control so much around us. And one of the challenges about Doha is, there's so many different countries there, and they all have different mindsets as it relates to health and safety measures. And Sarah, I think you guys getting in trouble because you're requesting food to your room just so that you didn't have to go down to the dining hall and be exposed to more people. But it just talks about those little things and those little competitive advantages that we're trying to leverage. Like if health becomes our competitive advantage going into Tokyo, if you guys stay healthy, if you guys make sure that we're doing all those little things to make sure that when it comes time to step on the sand in Tokyo, you guys have done X, Y, and Z, and that health has just become another one of our competitive advantages, the same way that sleep and travel, and yes, Brenda, melatonin, it will be a huge part of our travel plans, and it always is. So it's these guys are experts at that. And now, you guys are back home. Mexico's right up ahead of us. We're a few weeks out from going to Mexico, or you guys are. I'm staying out of the bubble, but it's going to be like 3 weeks in Mexico in kind of a mini version of an Olympic bubble. What's your mindset like going into this little preparation period, but then also looking ahead to the 3 weeks in Mexico with 3 competitions?
Yeah, as Melissa said, we learned a lot in Doha, both about our on-court stuff and how, like, our comfort levels surrounding COVID protocols, etc. So we are taking that information and we're going to make the most of it in Mexico. Every time that we have a chance to step back and like really get to work on on the little things that will make us better, both individually and as a team, we love it. So the past couple weeks, we've been back in the gym, continuing to like maintain that foundation that we worked so hard for during those 9 months of COVID. And then, you know, just really dialing in little adjustments with our coach in our personal play and some like things we're adding in as a team. So we're going to put those into practice in a live format against great competition, and we're going to see what works and what doesn't. And the stuff that works, we'll save that and we'll use that in Tokyo when we need it. And the stuff that is no good, we'll move on. And, you know, sport and beach volleyball is all about experimentation, and that's what we're going to do. Obviously, we are fighters. We are going to fight and grind to win every single point. But we're using it, again, as a chance to gather intel on ourselves and others.
Yeah, and you know, if you guys and if we can continue to learn better than anyone else, faster than anyone else, that's just we can be miles ahead of anyone else if we can learn, consolidate that learning, and apply those learnings at a faster rate. It's huge. And I mean, the debrief process after each competition is key for us to hit that home. And it's been, you know, incredible already looking at what we're doing for Cancun. And Sarah, you know, you said the magic word, looking ahead, like we're right up against it. I think today my countdown's at 114 days before the start of the Olympic Games. Like we're there. This is right where that moment on the peak happened, and we kind of came back down into the building. So it's almost like we're just picking up right where we left off with like a 1 year preparation for it. Mel, you know, where's your mindset heading into the Olympics now that we're this close?
Yeah. I think Sarah mentioned the other day when we were doing an interview, a beautiful word that I think really exemplifies kind of our mindset heading in, and it's to surrender. And it's to surrender to the process and trust the process, that what our staff and our team and what we have done the last 4 years works. And as long as we stay on that path and we, stay true to who we are and follow and trust this process, it will ultimately result in what we're looking for. And that is a gold medal producing performance. And if we can show up to the Olympics and know that we did everything right, prepare the way that we should, the way that we know how to, and following, you know, the protocol that you've given us and Scott's given us and what we worked on as a team, it will ultimately end in exactly what we want.
And Sarah, anything to add to that?
No, she nailed it. And, you know, we are going to control the things we can. Our effort, our attitude, our preparation, and no matter what happens in Tokyo, we will leave that tournament knowing that we did everything in our power to make Canada proud of us.
And that's, I mean, that hits it right on the head. And I think leaving this, guys, and that's kind of where we're at right now, heading into Tokyo. But just a last parting message: what you guys see here, what we talked about today, it is truly a testament to Scott and Mel and Sarah and their hard work. But there's an immense amount of team behind the team, whether that's their mental performance coach, strength and conditioning, therapy, nutrition. It really is this massive team helping to support and all the little gears that help support this big machine and the entire Canadian program helping be ready for Tokyo. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time on a Wednesday night to hop on. And if you guys have any questions, I think Sheila, you're going to pop up there.
Yeah, I'm here. I mean, this was amazing, guys. Thank you so much for taking us on your roller coaster journey. And I think all the coaches on the call can think about their own roller coaster that they might still be on. So it's such a great analogy. But, you know, I want to read you one comment just in case you didn't see this in the chat. These women are world champions mentally, physically, and emotionally, as well as beach volleyball players. So excited to watch you win in Tokyo. So I don't think we can have any questions. I think that you guys, you've just nailed it. You have just really taken us behind the scenes in what you've experienced this past year, your personal growth, the ups and the downs, and you've reinforced through all of your messages, you know, the strength of the team, and that it all comes back to the strength in the team. And that's what's going to get you through, and how much you've learned. I think you're just going to be stronger for it. So we are all with you. I think I don't see any, like, I feel like you've left us this conference on such a high note. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to say before I sort of go into some of the closing wrap-up remarks. Feel free to say if you have a last word. But we're just all rooting for you. Just looking at you, I mean, we all feel very connected to this team, I think, now, based on what we've heard tonight.
Thank you.
Having us.
Okay, so thank you again, Ryan, Melissa, and Sarah, on behalf of the Coaches Association of Ontario and the Canadian Sport Institute of Ontario. We want to thank you for attending this evening's session, and for to all the coaches listening, for what has been an inspiring, motivating, and educational 8 days at the 2021 Ontario Coaches Conference. As coaches, we know very well that it's not enough to know, we must apply. And as you reflect on your learnings, coaches, from this past week, we encourage you to think about your key takeaways, those incredible pearls of wisdom that resonated with you, and share them with others. Or as Karina LeBlanc so passionately encouraged us, to walk away and dedicate just 15 minutes more each day to our why. I guess I sort of say to the coaches, what is that 15 minutes for you? So as a final reminder, you will have continued access to this virtual hub for 30 days. The COA is going to make available public video links and resources for you to view outside of the hub after the conference. We're going to send these out via email. So you're going to be able to rewatch all of these things or watch sessions that you missed. So a huge thank you again to the Government of Ontario for their support, and our incredible staff at the Coaches Association of Ontario. This truly was a team effort by all, but a special shout out to Eric McLaughlin and Natasha Creel, who took the lead on this conference. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and good night.